water. It's a team from Toronto, Canada. We, the North, are now we, the champions.
What is going on, Raptors Nation? It is Luca here back with the RaptorsNation.com podcast, coming to you with a Friday edition of the show. I usually drop these pods on Thursdays, but because the Raptors played on Thursday, it made more sense to drop it today. And usually that's going to be the case. Whenever the Raptors play on Thursdays, expect this pod to release on Fridays. So you look at the Raptors, I mean, they were coming into that matchup against the Thunder, winners of 2 straight against the Heat, against the Pacers. Some of the teams that you expect are going to be a part of that play-in picture when it's all said and done. But then the Raptors got served the reality check against the Thunder. I mean, to no one's surprise, really. I didn't think the Raptors were going to win that game. I didn't think the Raptors were going to cover the spread. We chalked that game up as just being a young rebuilding team meeting a juggernaut and a really good team. The Western Conference leading Thunder, a team that has championship aspirations and a team that has done it right of being patient, drafting the right guys, and now they find themselves in an ideal position moving forward. So in today's pod, I wanted to talk about where the Raptors are right now. What's their direction going to be? Because there's this ongoing debate of, should the Raptors tank? Are they too good to tank? Should they go for a play-in spot? Because they have definitely looked the part of that in some of these games. I also want to talk about Jakob Poeltl and his impact when it comes to this team. And then we're going to get into some Bruce Brown trade rumors. So do me a solid, everybody. Drop a like on the video. Subscribe to the channel for more content, more pods just like this. And please leave us a 5-star review wherever you get your favorite podcast, Apple, iTunes, or Spotify. You can find this podcast on either of those platforms. And you can go follow me on X at Luca Rosano 3. So it's very fascinating where the Raptors are right now. Completely different to where they were, say, 2 weeks ago when guys were sidelined, especially Scottie Barnes being the biggest name on the shelf. Raptors, they were still somewhat competitive, but they were not winning, and the losses piled up. And then Scottie Barnes returns, and this team has looked completely different for the better. I mean, he's this team's offensive hub. He does so much on that end of the floor. Defensively, he changes the game so much. You can see Scottie Barnes, you know, his impact is felt right away. He's this team's best player, and he's the engine. And, you know, minus that Thunder game, the Raptors, they had looked completely different with Scottie out there. That duo, that partnership with him and RJ thriving. The way he's able to play with Jakob Poeltl off the pick and roll. Just everything was coming together nicely. And then you looked at it, it's like the Raptors are starting to win. You know, they rack up 2 wins in a row. They were 5-3 in their last 8 going into the game against the Thunder. And then you started to look at the whole situation like this team might simply be too good to tank, especially when they continue getting pieces back. Grady Dick returned against the Thunder. You're still going to be expecting Olynyk back, Bruce Brown, Emmanuel Quickly's probably going to return in the next couple of weeks before the end of the year. So, like, the pieces are starting to come together. The play has been improving. And then when you look at some of the bad teams in the NBA, the Jazzes of the world, the Wizards of the world, like, you look at the Raptors compared to those teams, they are nowhere near them in terms of being that bad. So then it becomes a question of, are the Raptors able to even get a bottom 5 pick, even if they wanted to? Because when they're playing their guys, they're simply too good to be a bottom 5 team. Just to give it to you guys straight, like, I would love the Raptors to get a top 5 pick, be a part of that bottom 5. Yes, it would suck, but adding a blue chip prospect to this group would just set them up perfectly. But when this team is healthy, from what they've shown us, I just can't see them being part of that equation. And then you look at the standings, and I put this out on X the other day, where you look at the Raptors are at right now. They're 7-16, brutal record. Let's call it for what it is. But I think because of the East, the bottom of the East, just being so bad, by default, the Raptors are going to be a part of that playing picture, because look who's in front of the Raptors, right? When you talk about that play-in, I don't think the Raptors are getting a top 6 seed. Like that's pretty, that'd be a huge reach. So I'm ruling that out. But you look at the teams in front of them when you talk about 7, 8, 9, 10 in that play-in. Detroit 9-15. I know the Raptors lost them a couple of times, but you know they're a game and a half back of them. Indiana's 10th at 9-14. Like, the Pacers have been brutal, and the Raptors have beaten them twice already. The Brooklyn Nets, like, they have been surprising to me because I thought they were going to be at the bottom with the Wizards, but they're 10-13. They've been very inconsistent. Then you got their 9th, and you got the Bulls at 8th at 10-13. Again, another wildly inconsistent team. And then you got the Heat. So when you look at Pistons, Pacers, Nets, Bulls, the 4 teams directly in front of the Raptors in the standings, like, the Raptors are better than those teams, in my opinion. Like, a fully healthy Raptors squad is better than the Bulls, Nets, Pacers, Pistons, and Hornets, who they're clearly ahead of. Maybe the Sixers get it going and they leapfrog the Raptors, but the Raptors against those teams in front of them directly, like, they're a better team in my opinion. Yes, they're better than the Pacers. I'm not high on the Pacers as well. I think the Pacers, like, yeah, they could figure it out, but I think they're in trouble. That team has not looked good this season. Halliburton struggles. I got a lot of flack for saying it on X the other day, but that Siakam contract is not looking good for them. Like, that's a team that looked like they peaked last season, and they're just going downhill, which is good news for the Raptors because you want to see this next season when the Raptors own their 2026 first-round pick. I don't have the Raptors being a better team than the Heat. I know the Heat are going through some major, struggles of their own. They got to figure out what they're going to do with Jimmy, but I'll give the Heat the benefit of the doubt there. So I don't have the Heat or the Hawks better than the Raptors, but Bulls, Nets, Pacers, Pistons, I think the Raptors are a better ball club than those teams when healthy. So again, by default, it's hard to picture the Raptors being in the bottom 5 because you look at the bottom 5 teams right now, it's Wizards, Jazz, Pelicans. Those teams are not going anywhere. Like, they're toast. The Pelicans, like, they're done. I don't think injuries or guys coming back is going to save them. I think they're better off just, like, being as bad as they can and getting a good draft pick, kind of taking the similar route that the Grizzlies took last season of being terrible for 1 year, getting a good draft pick, and then being back on their feet the next year. The Sixers are the interesting one because I can still see them turning around, but honestly, they're not. Like, they're still there. So they're the 4th worst team, and then the Hornets are the 5th worst team. They've really fallen off a cliff. I don't know what happened to the Hornets. They started off playing pretty well. They've lost 7 in a row. They're 1-9 in their last 10. And then I think the Raptors are going to end up leapfrogging the Blazers. Like, I think the Blazers are going to be a part of that bottom 5. So even if the Sixers move on up, I think the Blazers replace them. So the Raptors are not a part of that bottom 5 equation. They're not a part of it now, and I don't see them trending to that direction, especially when you take into consideration the schedule is going to ease up a lot more compared to the first part of the season. If they survive these next 10 games and they get into the new year with more wins, then that schedule is going to be even more lenient. So all that factored in, like, it's hard to imagine the Raptors not being a part of that play-in picture unless there's injuries. And by injuries, I mean, knock on wood, you don't want to see this, but, like, Barnes goes down again. RJ Barrett misses a significant amount of time. Quickly gets set back. But right now, what we're seeing, like, this trio is going to come together finally soon. Grady's back. And even if you don't factor in Olynyk or Brown, like, this is still a competent team when you do have their best players healthy on the court. And the Raptors are something like 5-7 with a healthy Barnes. And I think that's the biggest thing here. Like, as long as they have a healthy Barnes, you can't ask this team to be truly bad enough to be a bottom 5 team. So really, like, it's interesting what I think the Raptors' direction is. I think by default, they're going to be a part of that play-in equation. What do I think Raptors management is thinking behind the scenes? Yeah, they would probably love a top 5 pick, especially in a talented draft, but it's hard to see, like, a realistic pathway to that unless guys get injured or you go full-blown trade mode at the deadline. And by going full-blown trade mode, you offload Bruce Brown, who hasn't even played yet, a Chris Boucher, and you offload a guy who really impacts winning. And really, this is going to be our answer, I think, of where the Raptors are at. Of course, there's going to be a lot of determining factors leading into it about where this team stands, what the record is, health status, all that. But what the Raptors end up doing with Jakob Poeltl, guys, will be a big tell about where this team's head's at. And that's going to lead me to Jakob Poeltl's impact. Because I've said it before, and it's not rocket science when you look at the games that Poeltl plays in compared to the games that he doesn't play in. Jakob Poeltl is irreplaceable. He is that stabilizing force on this team. And we saw that impact and what it meant to a Raptors team that didn't have him in the lineup against the Thunder. Yes, it's bad enough they don't have any depth behind him because poor Bruno Fernando had to go out there start and Olynyk is still sidelined. But when Poeltl's not out there, the Raptors, they just do not have that same feel to them. They just do not have that same structure on both ends of the floor. Like whenever you eliminate a guy in Poeltl who's playing the best basketball of his career, averaging 16 points a game, 11 rebounds. He's been huge on the glass. Rick Carlisle called him one of the most underrated players in the NBA the other day. When he's not out there, this team's defense crumbles. Their offense becomes stagnant. A lot of what they like to do fades away. And here's where you'll know where the Raptors' head's at. If they keep Poeltl, they want to go for a playing spot. They believe that this team can compete and try to be a playing team for the season. But if they trade away Poeltl, that is a bulletproof way to ensure that this team is going to be bad because the proof is in the pudding. Without Poeltl, the Raptors were 4-28 last season. And you can even say, 4-29 if you include the Thunder game because that was the first game he missed this season. So they are not a good basketball team without Poeltl. So we'll see where the Raptors are at record-wise, but if the Raptors end up trading Poeltl, that's a dead giveaway that they are interested in tanking away the rest of the season at that point of trying to get a good pick because that would ensure they would have a pretty good chance of doing that. Because, yes, you would still have Scotty, IQ, RJ, but you need a big. You need a solid, stabilizing big, and Poeltl has been the perfect fit with some of these players and what they like to do. Like, notice RJ Barrett's game without Poeltl. Like he had 17 points, 11 rebounds, but he struggled mightily from the field because a lot of those drives, that pick and roll game that, ensured Barrett would get easy looks, like that was eliminated. The two-way play with Barnes was eliminated. So without Poeltl, this team is not very good. And it's evident now. There's a big enough sample size that suggests that. So I think that's going to be a big piece here. Like beyond the Bruce Brown, the Boucher, it would help if you trade those guys away in terms of getting bad, but it would not have the same impact as it would trading away a Poeltl because you can survive not having Boucher and Brown. I mean, they're already winning games when Boucher's not having a good game and Brown hasn't been played yet. But when Poeltl is not there, and we'll see if he misses the game against Saturday, the Raptors they're not only they're not good, but they're not even competitive. And again, this stems back to last season. I'm not just using that one game against OKC. That, of course, is the anomaly because they are super talented. But Jakob Poeltl makes this team so much better. So I think that will be a big determining factor in all of this. And we'll see where the Raptors are at. But I know there's two sides to this, right? Like a lot of fans want to see this team compete and win, and you don't want to cut the wings off these guys. You want to let them go out there and perform. But the other side kind of sees this realistically, and it's like, you don't want the Raptors to be in the middle ground, right? And they kind of feel like they are in that middle ground at this point. And if you are bad for another season, you get another top pick, then you could be potentially cooking. But again, I think for the Raptors to be truly bad and tank, they got to trade Poeltl. It's as simple as that. Like, he makes a world of difference for this basketball team. And if they keep Poeltl around and guys are healthy, I just don't see the Raptors being a part of that bottom five equation. And I see this team being a playing team. I really do. Because they're not going to be worse than some of those teams ahead of them over the course of the season. Some of those teams are eventually going to fall back, and the Raptors are going to take their place. So keep an eye on these final 10 games. If, things hit the fan and they lose their next 10 or whatever, something crazy, it makes the decision easier. But if they're kind of like 500 basketball, winning some of these games, and they're competitive against the good teams, I think the Raptors are going to be a playing team, and that's not going to be good news for Team Tank. But we'll see. We'll see what happens with their next 10. We'll see what ends up happening with Poeltl, and if his name continues to pop up in trade rumors and the Raptors entertain that. But Jakob Poeltl has been not only an impactful player for this Raptors team, but he has been one of the most impactful bigs in the game. And contending teams are looking at Poeltl right now, and he would help teams significantly because Brown and Boucher are bench guys for other teams. Like Poeltl would be a starter. And, that's a guy who can help a number of teams that are trying to take that next step when it comes to their playoff chances and making a run. So we'll see what happens with Poeltl, but you got to give him his flowers, man. He has been a really good player. People are recognizing it, and you feel it. When he's not out there, the Raptors look like a shell of themselves in multiple different ways. All right, guys, speaking of trade rumors, I thought I would end with this because there haven't been any like concrete reports when talking about Boucher and Jakob Poeltl being on the move, but we did get something interesting from Michael Scotto of Hoops Hype revolving Bruce Brown. I thought Brown was going to be back at this point. At least that's what the reports were indicating, that the Raptors were expecting to have Brown back on that 4-game road trip. That did not happen. Brown has not played at all this season, continues to rehab that knee following his offseason knee surgery. And Michael Scotto, he does believe that Brown's name is going to continue to pop up in trade rumors and he's expected to be moved at the upcoming trade deadline. This is what Scotto said. One prevalent belief throughout the league is that Toronto will look to trade Bruce Brown, who's on an expiring $23 million deal. Last year, Toronto declined offers of multiple second-round picks for Brown. Interesting. League sources told Hoops Hype. This season, Brown has yet to play after having arthroscopic surgery procedure on his right knee. So Brown is ramping up, and hopefully, for the Raptors' sake, he can play soon, so then he can have at least, a month or so of play time, of being fully healthy for potential suitors to look at and still see the value in trading for a guy like Brown. He's 28 years old. Raptors picked up that $23 million option of his this past summer to give him flexibility in a trade this season. They didn't necessarily have to trade him last season, and as a result of that, they didn't rush a trade that they didn't like. As Scotto mentioned, they had shut down, offers that included, second rounders, multiple second round picks. So that's interesting. And then you look at Brown, what his value is, like still once he's healthy, Brown is still a very capable, valuable, versatile player who can help a championship contending team. Like not as a starter, but he can be that very excellent bench guy, like that rotation piece, that guy who can be in a playoff rotation, impact the game. We saw what he did with the Nuggets that year. Health is going to be the biggest thing with him. Is he going to look to be his old self? Because he talked about it at large like that, and he was bothering him. And that's why he didn't look like the same Bruce Brown last season, the Raptors. And it looked like he didn't want to be on the team. He flat out said it. It wasn't because I didn't want to play. I'm paraphrasing here. It's not like he said, it's not like I didn't want to play with the team, but just, I had this nagging injury. And then finally, the Raptors organization opted. It wouldn't make sense for him to just have the surgery, which he has had, and now he's working his way back from it. So what the interesting thing here is going to be is the fact that the Raptors didn't like the multiple second rounders for him last season, but like, is Bruce Brown really going to warrant a first round pick this season? Especially when the dude hasn't played yet and we don't know when he's going to be back. And then if he does come back, if he doesn't look to be the same, like that's just going to diminish his value even more, you would think. Like unless he comes back, looks like a capable role player, knocks out of the park, looks like the Bruce Brown of old, I think you can restore that asking price of a first round pick. But if Brown continues to miss games here and then he comes back and he doesn't really look to be the same, like our team's real, like I don't see teams forking away a first round pick. The only player on this team I see teams forking away a first round pick is Jakob Poeltl if you sell high on him, because he's been playing amazingly well and he can instantly help a contending team go for it this season. But Boucher, you're getting a second, if anything. And then Brown, like, I don't think you're getting that first round pick. So I know that was the original asking price for the Raptors, and they waited to give themselves more time, more leeway. But with Brown being sidelined, it doesn't help the case to get a first round pick for him. Unless the team's desperate, they view the significance of having Brown in their rotation on their playoff roster, they could go for it. But I just don't see it at this point. So hopefully Brown can come back. He can restore that lost value, because I still do think the Raptors, like, that is their main priority. I think, Bruce Brown trade is imminent. And I think, like, that is going to happen one way or another. If the Raptors decide to go back on their asking price and they decide, second rounders are enough, we'll take it, then they're probably going to have a pathway to that. But a first round pick might be a stretch at this point, unless, like I said, Bruce Brown can come back soon and show you his value Because again, it's a big ask for a team. It's a big risk for a team, right? Trading for a guy, forking away a first-round pick who's coming off surgery, like you don't know what you're going to get, especially when you haven't seen a sample size of him following that surgery. So we'll see what happens with Brown, but I think the pecking order of trades with this Raptors team, Brown, Boucher, and then the big one's Poeltl. Like I still don't know what's going to happen with him. And like I said previously, I think it's going to be a big tell of what this team's plan is for the second part of the season. They keep Poeltl, they're going for the plan. They trade him away, they're going for the tank. I think that's the simplest way of putting it when you look at this overall game plan of the Raptors for the season. But we'll see what happens, guys. But nonetheless, the Raptors, they have looked a lot better lately, minus that OKC game. These games have been fun. And really, that was like I want to say the second time only this season the Raptors were absolutely dog walked. Like the first time was against the Cavaliers on opening night. So they have been playing hard. And really, we'll see how they look against the Mavs, who are a really good team, and then the Knicks. We'll see if the Raptors can put up a fight or if they continue to look lifeless as they did against the Thunder. But nonetheless, this has been a wild season to say the least, and we still don't know what the overall direction is for the season. But hopefully we get our answers soon. But guys, let me know your thoughts. Drop a like on the video. Subscribe to the channel if you are new. Follow me on X if you aren't already at Luca Rosano 3. Thank you so much for your continued support of this channel. This is Luca signing off. Until next time, stay safe.